Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate this opportunity. I've learned a lot just from listening, and I really want to thank the patients who came forward to speak. I learned so much from you. I'm a fellowship-trained pain physician. I was trained at the University of Washington in Seattle, largely in multidisciplinary pain management, although I participated in all the pain services at that time. Next slide. So today I'm going to bring you something a little bit different because a lot of people here are experts on TMD, and though I'm familiar with it, I am not someone who treats TMD or has treated TMD frequently. But I'm going to talk to you about making clinical policy at Aetna. We have many clinical policies. We have over, I think we're into the 900s now. You can see all of them at www.aetna.com. We have a lot of pain policies, so I invite you to take a look at them and what we cover. I've actually attached a copy of our TMD policy to this presentation so that you can peruse it. So who is on the clinical policy team? I'm actually the chair of the committee, but the policy team is led by Robert McDonough, who is really the brains. He's an MD-JD and has a lot of experience in making policy, including on the Hill. The literature, though, is reviewed on a daily basis because issues arise throughout the country. So when medical directors are reviewing cases, things come up that aren't necessarily included in one of our clinical policies. They address those. They do literature searches. We also have subject matter experts in the company. We have over 300 physicians now. We have neurosurgeons, anesthesiologists, 3 ENTs, etc. So we have people to run things by. And we also have OMFS, dentists and oral maxillofacial and surgeons who actually do the review of cases for TMD. Next slide. So our decision policies are based on the peer-reviewed medical literature. And I won't go into specifically how we do that search, but that's the basis for how we make decisions. I mentioned we have subject matter experts who we also consult with professional societies for opinions if necessary. All our CPBs are dynamic, but they're all at least reviewed once per year, even if issues don't arise with that CPB, for accuracy and whether it's keeping up with what the literature says. But as I said, CPBs are reviewed dynamically. On any given day, we get many requests for things that aren't necessarily clear on the CPBs. We'll do literature search and make changes. So let's go on to the next slide. Next slide. Back one slide. So the Clinical Policy Council, which I'm the chair of, we meet every 2 weeks, review any new clinical policy bulletins and changes to clinical policy bulletins. And the changes arise from feedback we get from the literature, issues that come from medical directors, other sources, even things in the news sometimes. So things like Academies get a lot of attention all at once. CPBs are presented, and the medical directors of this council vote on whether to approve the changes in the CPB or the new CPB. Next slide. So I'm the chair of this council, and I have the tie-breaking vote. And fortunately, I don't rarely have to use that. At the meeting, we also have discussion items of difficult clinical issues. So TMD might be a discussion item sometimes, and how to best address specific issues coming up related to the clinical policy bulletin, things that were a little gray. We're not sure how to handle that situation. We'll have discussions. We'll also invite sometimes subject matter experts or people from professional societies to speak to us at the council meeting. Next slide. So let me just, there's a couple slides that didn't make it out here. So there are clinical coverage criteria, and the following criteria are considered in evaluating medical technology. The technology must have final approval from the appropriate governmental regulatory bodies when required. The scientific evidence must permit conclusions concerning the effect of the technology on health outcomes. The technology must improve net health outcome, and the technology must be as beneficial as any established alternative. The improvement must be attainable outside investigational settings. And how do we prioritize requests? And these are the factors that help us in prioritizing the quantity and importance of the questions that have arisen regarding the medical technology. So if we get one question, we may just address that separately as a unique situation. But when we're having a lot of feedback saying that in this particular clinical policy bulletin, we're having issues with this particular situation, we'll actually go ahead and try to make a change in the clinical policy bulletin so that it can keep up to date and address each situation as it arises. New evidence, guidelines, consensus statements, changes in regulatory status, or other information that's material to the status of medical technology is something that causes us to create a CPB or to change a CPB. And the potential impact of technology on Aetna and its members is very important in determining what we do. Now, we have a CPB approval process, and the draft CPB is reviewed and approved by the CPC Council. Then the Chief Medical Officer reviews it, then it goes to the legal department, and then we actually work with the coding areas to, and I'm glad that Dr. Barad brought that up because this is very important in modern medicine, is to establish appropriate coding so things get paid appropriately. Now, we also have something called the Specialty Society Policy Liaison Group. And what we have is we have medical directors based on specialty largely that are assigned to particular professional societies. So if an issue comes up, we're concerned about something, we will ask the opinion of the professional societies that we meet about once every month for this particular meeting. One of the things that I included here is a copy of our CPB for temporomandibular disorders. And so you can read that, and one of the it gives you the general idea of what we're looking at. We want to see conservative management, etc. So let's go to the next slide. We also have what we cover regarding diagnostic testing, etc., and try to keep that up to date. I invite the committee to take a look at that and give me any feedback if you see something. Next slide. And so let's keep going on the slides. I want to get to, okay, so here's what we cover. More, I mean, the surgical things are interesting, and there's a list of them of what we do and don't cover based on the evidence, but here's what we don't cover. And I think this kind of follows on Dr. Baran's presentation. My background is interdisciplinary pain management. So we cover physical therapy. We even cover manipulation under anesthesia. Let's go on to the next slide. Pharmacologic management, next slide. And here's what I want to get to is the fact that we actually cover cognitive behavioral therapy, relaxation techniques, etc., because we see that it's just like any other chronic pain condition, and it's not that you're treating people in a Cartesian way where you say this particular intervention, surgery, etc., or this particular drug is going to cure you. We see it as a multidisciplinary and a holistic kind of a problem, like any other chronic pain issue. The other thing on this slide is it says TCPB 237 chronic pain programs. We cover interdisciplinary care, and we've had this particular CPB for so many years. I've worked for Aetna for 24 years, and we probably had it for 20. It was reviewed by Dr. John Lozier at UW, who was my mentor, and I invite you to take a look at that. But you know, this is something that you can qualify for if you have a chronic pain program such as TMD. Let's go on next. If it's covered, we can actually cover acupuncture and trigger point injections. I mentioned manipulation. Next. And let's just keep going. Next slide. And mostly we're looking for prior conservative management, but here's the surgical procedures, and let's just keep going through them quickly. Next slide. Next. And then let's go. Keep going. Okay, and then we get into our experimental and investigational modalities. And so in diagnostic procedures, this is a list of things that we don't cover. And the next slide. Just continuing on, we see ketamines at the bottom of that, which is getting a lot of attention now. Also, injections of platelet-rich plasma and other stem cell type treatments are also, we're seeing a lot of. And then next, a whole bunch more, and then next. And here are the surgical things that we don't consider ready for delivery. So these are experimental and investigational, and take a look at those. And I think that's probably the last slide. Is that correct? Okay, and so in conclusion, I want to thank you for having me here. The process of making clinical policy is very interesting, and what I want to get across is that it's dynamic. It's not like we make a policy and it just sits there. It's continuously reviewed. And if it's a hot topic, we will review it repeatedly and repeatedly. So something may make its way through council, a few times in a quarter, simply because it's a difficult issue. But we always maintain the policies per year, regardless of whether there's an issue with them or not. My focus is interdisciplinary care, and I would like to see that we move forward in some way to get more multidisciplinary care to patients out there with chronic pain. And this doesn't exclude patients with TMD because it's another devastating chronic pain illness. I want to thank you again for having me. And if there are any questions later, I'd be happy to answer them. And if there's any issues related to what I presented, particularly our clinical policy bulletins, I would love feedback from the organization. Thank you.